So I have a good amount of behind the scenes footage that I use for things like Instagram Reels, TikToks, just short form content. And so I thought it would be cool to do just like a big compilation of some of my favorite little clips to final images and just throw them into one big long form video so you can kind of just binge a whole series. Now, with that in mind, I just want to point out a couple things. One, some of this behind the scenes footage are from things like photo walks, workshops, things like that. I want to point that out because a lot of the times when I share content like this, people write in the comments like, oh, you'll never do this on a real wedding. This isn't realistic for a real wedding. Now, a good majority of the footage is from real sessions. And I just want to point that out because I do these things on real weddings all of the time. It's just harder for me to get behind the scenes footage, especially like showing me shooting and things like that. And so I just want to point that out that all these things are 100% absolutely doable on a real wedding. Another thing that I want to point out is that while you're watching this, I would love if you could leave a comment and just let me know if there is a specific setup or image that you have more questions about or you would like to see more details about, because I would love to do some more longer form videos, maybe breaking down specific images, setups, maybe walking through some of the edits. Speaking of edits, all of the images in this series are edited with my preset, the Grandmaster series from DVLOP. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you are curious. And then make sure to stick around to the very end because I have a little bit of a longer BTS clip where you can hear me talking, explaining some things. And I just kind of threw that in at the very end. So if you'd like to see more content like that video clip as well, make sure to let me know. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. of artwork here and this like little dome light. I'm not a huge fan of the text, but that's super easy to take out in post-production. But again, what I see when I find a composition is how can I create something that's interesting with light. And so what I saw is that this door has this little like strip of window. And so if I shut this, it'll flag off all of the light except for the light that goes through this little window. The only worry is that it has these like little lines in it. So I'm not sure if that's gonna affect the light. It might be cool, it might ruin it. So we'll see. But again, I'm gonna shut the door. I'm just gonna look through the window and put my light so that what I see with my eyes is what the light is gonna see. And so I think you guys are gonna be like around this area. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of get a general pose so I can make sure that the light's gonna fall on their face. Let's have you just kind of hug on his arm. And you guys are both gonna be just kind of looking that way. Yep. But turn towards her a little bit more. There we go. And then you guys are both gonna be kind of looking off.
Alright guys, you're missing a shoot out here.
This is for Jason's Instagram, guys. So on 3, 2, 1, say wow. 3, 2, 1. Wow!
We don't stage anything.
No, that happened. That happened.
Okay, let's see. Oh, I'm gonna need a wider lens.
Wow, she's not that big.
I'll take that. Someone can read the Don't Be a Dickhead. Copy that.
Okay guys, get in your pose real quick.
No more donuts.
Okay, so again, let's have you guys look through the window. Through the window? Yep. And then I just need to adjust it so it makes sense. Okay. So faces tight to each other, or just, but still look through the window, so just kind of like lean in. There we go. And then can you guys both see that light through there? Yep, perfect. Okay. Too bright. Good ab workout. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Feel the abs.
Okay. There we go. And then again, I'll probably Photoshop out the text. Right, so yeah, it would be, so it would be like if sunset was coming through that window, right? So easy to see from up there.
Now's your turn, guys.
Okay, so that's it. Hopefully you guys found this useful and entertaining. If you did, I'd love it if you would give me a like, comment, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Also, if you are interested in learning more from me in person, depending on when you are watching this, I do have an in-person workshop with a handful of friends of mine in Italy that is going to be just absolutely fantastic. So find a link to that in the description, as well as a code for $250 off if you do decide to join us. And when it comes to education, if you are not interested in doing anything in person, but you still want to see some more premium content from me, you can find some more of that over on my Patreon channel. So with that, I'll catch you on the next one.